Joy, tell us about your time in England.
Well, when I was 5 years old, my mother was diagnosed with tuberculosis, and she was very ill, and she had to go away to a sanitarium for, as it turned out, for a year. And my father was in the military and working full-time, and so they discussed it, and it was decided that my sister Barbara would be sent to stay with my father's parents in Brooklyn, New York, and I would go with my mother's sister, Aunt Olive, back to England, where she was working in the hospital at Stourbridge. It was the Corbett Hospital in Stourbridge. Anyway, I was 5 years old, and so I was old enough to go to school. And so I don't know why the decision was made to send me to a convent school, but I was sent to a convent school run by Catholic nuns, and it was in Kidderminster. I don't remember the name of the school. I could look it up. But anyway, it was a big school. It was a girls' school, and it was a number of different grades. Mine was the youngest, kindergarten, right on up to probably high school age, and we all wore uniforms. I remember it was a navy blue skirt and a white blouse and a blue and red striped tie and a beret and a navy blue sweater. And they were long days. I took a bus, and I remember I had to take a bus and change and get on another bus and then get there. I recall it was a long ride. I couldn't tell you how long it was. Fortunately, there were other students from the area who were also taking the bus, so I went with them. But it was a long day. It was something like 9 to 4, which is a long time for a kindergartner. And we had lunch there, and the nuns were very strict. And I remember, even though I was in kindergarten, that we were working on writing, we were learning our letters, we were starting to read and things like that. And as I said, the nuns were very strict, and I remember one time that I was in the back of the room. My maiden name was Zengel, which starts with a Z, and so I was in the very back of the room, and I was talking to the little girl who was sitting next to me, and you weren't supposed to talk in class. So the nun called me up to the front of the class and had me put my hands out in front of her like this, and then she slapped my hands with a ruler, and that hurt. So I remember that. Anyway, so I went to school there for a year, and when I wasn't going to school, I lived with my aunt and her friend in the really, really nice old brick house that was connected to Corbett Hospital. And I don't know whether my aunt's friend was matron then. I think she was, and I think my aunt was assistant matron, and she also taught a number of classes to student nurses. And so in the same building where they lived was also a series of classrooms. And I remember that my aunt used to do classes on baby care and things like that, and I would always, between classes, not always, but I would often between classes go in and take the demonstration dolls to play with and take them out to the yard. And so my aunt would have to come looking for me to find the demonstration dolls so that she could do her class. But it was a beautiful setting. The Corbett Hospital was a beautiful setting. It was at the top of a hill, and the hospital was up here, and there were green grounds all the way around, and they leased out the grounds to cattle, to somebody who ran cattle on them. So you sort of walked carefully up so you didn't run into the cows. And then at the bottom of the hill were the classrooms and the house where we lived. I remember while I was in England, I got measles, and I remember, of course, I guess one of the dangers of measles is that it affects your eyesight. It can affect your eyesight, because I remember I had to stay in a darkened room, and I couldn't look at books or anything like that. I just had to stay sort of in a darkened, it wasn't pitch dark, but in a darkened room. And I remember there was a children's ward at the hospital, and one time they had a big party for the children in the children's ward, and I got to go to it. And I remember there were balloons, and everybody got gifts of one kind or another, and I got actually I got several books. And that was fun. That was a lot of fun. It was a good life. It was a good life. So, what else can I tell you about England? Anyway, I was there for a year, and my mother eventually recovered and came home from the sanatorium, and so my parents sent to Auntie Olive and said it was time for me to come home. And so my aunt and her friend drove to the airport, I don't know what airport it was, and put me on the airplane, and I flew back to the United States. And I came home with an English accent. I do remember one funny thing, well, I don't know how funny it was, but you know, of course, that My Country 'Tis of Thee is the very same tune as God Save the King or God Save the Queen. And so one time I was in first grade, which was very soon after I came back. I started first grade. And so they were singing songs. And one of the songs, they started, you know, the lady played the piano and she started up with My Country 'Tis of Thee. Well, I do it as God Save the Queen. So I was singing God Save the Queen. And they were singing My Country 'Tis of Thee. And there was distress. I was like, you know, what are you doing? That's not the right song. It's like, well, yeah, it is. So, anyway, and actually, I was right because that was the original song, was God Save the Queen. And probably the Americans deliberately made the My Country 'Tis of Thee with the same tune. That's all I can think of at the moment.
Thank you. That was appreciated, Joy, for your comments. All the noise in the background is the goats. Tucker, Monty, Betty. There's Jerry up there. And the others have disappeared. Thank you, though.
You're welcome.